Hey everybody, welcome back to Word of Mouth.
Hey.
We are so excited to be back. We are here live. You're going to be listening to this whenever it's nice and warm in June. But right now it's April 18th, and we are here in beautiful Avondale, Alabama.
Praise God.
On a nice, it feels like June right now. The weather's amazing.
It is. It's nice and warm out.
Mm-hmm.
It is warm.
Oh my gosh, who is that?
Wait, I just heard a voice. It wasn't
a third-
Steven. Who is that?
That's not Myers. Who is that?
Yeah, Jeff Wright.
That's Jeff Wright. Today's guest, everybody. Round of applause. Cha-cha-cha. We're super thrilled. You know, this is so fun. I don't know what kind of order we're putting these out in, but literally
Chronological.
An hour and a half ago, we were just having a conversation with a guy who's starting a deli in Birmingham. And now we get to talk to a guy who's not starting a deli in Birmingham, but has started something, I guess like
kind of completely different. Yeah.
It's like kind of like a deli in some ways.
In some ways, it generates revenue.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, excited to have you on, Jeff. I literally just met Jeff a few minutes ago, but he's a stand-up guy from what I know so far. Excited to have you here, have a conversation. Jeff gets to actually. I'll let you introduce yourself. I'm not gonna put any words in your mouth. So Jeff, who are you? What are you doing here?
Yeah, my name's Jeff Wright.
Come on.
Live over on the Leeds side of town in Birmingham, so came far and away.
Yeah.
To Avondale,
home of Buc-ee's.
That's right. Prefer to say Barber Motorsports.
I was going to say Barber Motorsports Park. You know, one of the most
yesterday,
elite racetracks in the country.
I heard that it was the Augusta of racing.
Quite literally.
I had never known that.
Have you been out there before?
Yeah,
never.
It's really nice.
I have parked cars at several of their events because a Pi Kappa alum gave us money to do it. Yeah. But I've been there to park cars, but I've never been to the actual place.
It's in the museums.
Yeah,
it's
world class.
Like even if you don't like motorcycles, it's cool.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you into that stuff?
I am, but you don't have to be. Like
I was talking to a student yesterday who was a part of the college ministry I work at. Her name's Grace, and I was like, "So what are you doing, like post grad?" She's about to graduate in like 2 weeks. She was like, "Oh, I work in motorsport," and I was like, "What?" Because that is not the typical answer you get from a Sanford Bulldog.
Yeah,
and she is like, if everything goes to plan, she's gonna work with the Porsche Experience, which is at that track too.
Yeah,
she's been like the Porsche Experience is like a global thing, and they like have one of their franchises here, and she's between getting a job here or the one at Pebble Beach.
Wow.
And I was like, what the crap? I had no idea.
Cool.
That is awesome.
Barber and Buc-ee's and
Bass Pro, the infamous Bass Pro.
Yep.
And the putt-putt course, which happens to be at the outlets.
Yep.
But more importantly, the only putt-putt course in the entire city of Birmingham is in Leeds, Alabama.
Which is crazy.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
It's completely for free,
out.
too, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you into motorcycles and cars and stuff?
Yeah, I love anything with an engine. I like.
Yeah,
love
we'll
it.
definitely have to hit on that.
That's hilarious. We've only talked about you're from Leeds. What else?
No, yeah. Well, so we just have been out there a couple of years.
Okay.
So we lived on the other end of 119.
Okay.
Just in one of the little neighborhoods there, and so really for a long time.
Yeah.
I've been kind of on that side of the tracks, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you grow up around Birmingham?
No, so Decatur, Alabama.
There you go.
No place greater.
North Alabama.
I learned that slang yesterday.
No place greater than
Decatur. Than Decatur.
Wow.
Love it.
For Decatur?
No place greater than Decatur.
I mean, but that's the saying for Decatur.
Yeah.
Alabama.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you ever learn that one?
I did not. I did not. Yeah. Yeah. So we came from Knoxville, Tennessee.
Okay.
When I was in the 4th grade, my dad's an electrical engineer. He worked for TVA, Browns Ferry, his whole career. And so pretty much grew up in Decatur. My grandparents lived in Knoxville. I have one grandmother still left, and she's still there.
Wow.
Go Vols.
Yeah. So we got to be quiet about that, though.
I mean, I'm not a Tennessee fan. I was just trying to make you feel.
Make you feel at home.
Yeah. And I don't get too crazy about this. I do like watching sports, but
sure.
I had one friend that his dad. We moved from Knoxville. Yeah, my dad's a big Tennessee fan. He graduated from Tennessee, and man, they are hardcore Alabama fans.
No way.
And so he would always press me on fat Phil Fulmer
Yeah.
back in the day. If y'all remember him,
Yeah.
in the '90s,
Yeah.
It's funny.
he was pretty fat, but he was the prime of Tennessee. Like that was
Yeah.
hadn't been,
Yeah.
kind of fallen since then. But we're coming back.
Hey,
Yeah.
and
Coming
you
back.
got a fat coach again. So,
And so I don't really like Alabama, but I have a lot of Alabama friends. But it's all Mr. Adams' fault.
Right. Right.
Because he wouldn't shut up about.
So what was childhood in Decatur like? Do you have siblings?
I've got one brother. He's 2 years older.
Okay.
And so, mom and dad, we just had a kind of a normal family, I'd say, as far as just, I'd say kind of normal middle class, nothing crazy. We, the dad was an engineer, so he's, they're pretty, particular and orderly.
Sure.
And so my life growing up was really being a people pleaser, frankly, because it was like, just don't get out of line and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we grew up at Central Baptist Church in Decatur. And so hardcore Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
And spent, played soccer, but spent most of my time at the youth group at Central Baptist Church.
Yeah.
So that's where I met my wife.
Oh, no way.
go.
So high school sweethearts? Middle school sweethearts?
Fourth grade, we met in fourth
Wow.
grade. So she, we went to different schools, but the same church.
Yeah.
And so, that's a whole nother.
Did you go to Allen or which school did you go to?
I went to Austin. Is
Austin,
that what
sorry,
you're?
not
Yeah. So
Allen.
she
Yeah,
was
yeah.
at Decatur. Yeah.
Austin beat me in the high school football playoffs.
Steven's from Gardendale.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Go Rockets. Come on. Hail the Dale forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm from
Yeah.
Mississippi, so I'm still learning about all the high schools in Alabama.
Austin had a guy who was like going to Alabama like to play running back or something like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
He was a freak.
Go
But
crazy.
I don't really remember anything besides that. But.
Yeah.
Okay, so you went
Yeah.
to Austin High School,
Went to Austin High
played
School.
soccer, youth group.
Yeah. And so, just kind of did that. Was real involved with church. That was kind of my place to really got tons of approval,
Yeah.
Yeah.
could really do that well, I guess. I was kind of a people pleaser, just kind of fell in line. But I did love church, going to church. We had a great youth director. I probably could talk about that later even, but he was very, David McKelvey. Like we don't really talk to him, but we'll see him. We used to see him at kids events. He was just very personable, very relatable. Never made you feel like a project or some kind of,
Someone
job.
to be fixed or something.
Yeah,
sure.
we'd run with him, and we'd just go hang out at his house. He was great.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so really kind of learned what discipleship was like from him.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that was a great experience. That was probably the best thing
Yeah.
out of Decatur.
Yeah. Did you do college?
Yep, went to Sanford. So I had a brother, so he went to Auburn, and so do like Auburn. But I thought I was going to be a pastor,
Okay.
and go into the ministry, and I didn't. I was kind of I figured Sanford, was the Southern Baptist school,
Yeah.
Sure.
right? And they had a religion degree.
Yep.
And I was like, well, I'll go to Sanford and do that.
Yeah.
And so ended up at Sanford on a kind of like a scholarship, like for
Being a pastor.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So do we just keep going there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Did your wife go to Sanford too?
she
Or
did.
your to-be wife?
Yeah, she
Were you all
did. but
dating in high school?
we did, but then we were off and
Here we
on.
go.
So we didn't go to Sanford together on purpose.
Okay, sure.
But that's a whole nother
Just
probably.
just a nice little providential coinky dink.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay. So you got to Sanford.
yeah, got to Sanford.
And you were a religion major, I guess, whenever you
I
got there?
started out as a religion major.
Okay.
And then my dad was like, I don't know if you should do that because, like, if you go to seminary, you're just going to kind of double up, is what he considered it in
Yeah.
his
Fair.
mind.
Yeah, that's fair.
And so it was like, why don't you just do something in case,
Sure.
so different in case.
It's
And
a good move.
yeah, so I got a business degree.
Okay.
Got a business degree, and stuck with that.
Yeah.
And so jumped right into again, I could just plug into the ministry stuff. Like it just was comfortable
Yeah.
and easy, and I kind of knew how to do it, I guess.
Sure.
and there's good and bad about that we can talk about for sure. But like that's what I did.
Yeah,
So I just kind of went into that, and we would we ended up on this like a little team that would go around all these little country churches, and I was the preacher.
Yeah.
you know.
Totally.
Didn't your dad do that too?
He did.
My
Yeah,
uncle
he
did that.
He did the like the small country churches that don't have a pastor, but they have a congregation of 20 people or whatever.
Yeah.
He would go and like teach on a Sunday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's probably a similar program to whatever you're doing, because my dad was there in the 90s too.
Yeah, no,
At the same
man.
time.
I need to look that up.
I was gonna say I need to show you a picture of him, because
Yeah.
you probably would recognize his face.
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah.
How far out in the country would you go? Like, how far away would they be?
It would be like I don't think we did Sunday mornings left that I remember. It was like Sunday night kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
You know, and so maybe an hour or two, you know. Like
That's
just
awesome.
it was small country churches, and we would kind of lead their service.
Yeah. That's cool.
Kind of awesome.
What church did you go to when you were at Sanford?
Yeah, so Dawson.
Okay.
Dawson. Started out at Dawson, and then I had a discipleship leader that was at Covenant Presbyterian. So that was one of the cool things that kind of I went into Sanford as a Baptist, you know, good little Southern Baptist, and came out Presbyterian. Came out Reformed.
Yeah.
But what was cool was there was this little group of us from Decatur. My brother, Kelly and her sister, a couple other friends, that were all like hardcore Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
And we had one of them that was going to seminary, and he was older, and he was like, guys, man, y'all need to listen to this guy named R.C. Sproul.
Yeah.
Y'all should check this guy out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's where we learned about Calvinism kind of, and Tulip, you know, and R.C. Sproul cassette tapes back then.
Yeah.
And,
crazy.
And we all kind of in our own way kind of morphed into this Reformed kind of, you know, theology, I guess. And came out Presbyterian.
Wow.
So ended
Usually
up
what happens at Stanford, to be honest.
Yeah. To be
really?
honest, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
I grew up Southern Baptist, and now I go to a church that definitely leans Reformed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also spent some time at Briarwood.
Yeah.
Just because of one of the missions pastors there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
so
you
it was kind of
Reformed and, you know, Briarwood, so.
that was
had
like
to.
the place to, you know.
Had to pay your taxes.
Yeah. It was the
Where along the way did you get married?
That had to be post well, I mean, we haven't talked earlier. You said you did mission, so. I'm assuming
So
you
we'll
waited
just
till after
let's
that.
keep going. So
Okay,
then
okay.
so Kelly and I were off and on. I was more the off.
Got it.
And so like every semester we might go out,
You sure?
you know, once or something. And then I just was not a communicator. There's so much I could say about that, but that was a downside to our family. We did not talk.
Okay.
It was, you know, our needs were met and everything was, you know, sparkling clean.
Yeah.
and in order. But we just did not talk. There was no emotional.
Not a lot of EQ, emotional intelligence. Yeah.
Zero. And so that was, I'm still learning more about that, actually. And so, I would try to talk to Kelly. She would, want to, she's very aware emotionally and things.
Yeah.
And I just would, I couldn't handle it. And I would just run.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so,
We're guys, we understand.
yeah, so I just would run. I'd freak out and run. And then I'd be like, man, if I could just talk to her, I know I would love her.
Yeah.
Like I would like her, And so we, so we were off and on. And this is kind of part of our story, I guess. But I was, I was going to, so I either wanted to be a NASCAR driver. That was on the bucket list.
Yep.
Love racing, so I wanted to race NASCAR, or I wanted to go to Australia to be a missionary.
Wow.
That was
So you chose NASCAR.
NASCAR hadn't worked out yet.
Right.
I might still have a chance.
Right.
I don't know.
It's not too late. You're alive.
Yeah, but one of the guys that I was in a discipleship group with, was gonna. Well, I met Tom Sheely at Briarwood, and he was, I don't know if y'all ever heard his name.
Yeah.
He's passed away now. He was awesome. And man, you could talk for him for 5 minutes and he'd have you going to Africa, He would love it,
Yeah.
And, so I was talking to him about different just opportunities, and Australia was one that came up. They were going to do a college campus ministry there with Mission to the World is how it originally started out. And so
That's what they called Campus Outreach, or that was like a different organization?
that's like the organization for the PCA.
Oh,
the
okay.
missions organization for the PCA Church.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I guess it's called that still. I don't know.
So when did PC start then? Is PCA the one that Briarwood started already?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I always get those mixed up. Sorry.
Yeah.
So PCA is the for those that are listening that might not understand church lore and stuff. PCA is a branch of the Presbyterian Church that Briarwood started, and that's why Briarwood is like famous. Am I?
I don't know that they
right?
started it,
But they're like one of the first people that
they're definitely a hub.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then so anyways.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and I don't even know all that history, but yes, this would be the more conservative line of
Right.
Presbyterian, I guess.
Sure.
If you're going to classify it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so one of my discipleship leader was putting together. They were older. They were probably 5 years older. Lyle Caswell was his name,
Okay.
and so he. They were going to start a team to go to Brisbane, Australia, and we were going to go to Griffith University. That was the first school. There's Queensland University was there as well, or the University of Queensland, I believe is what it is. And so, Lyle, he had a friend, Phil Chambers.
Yeah.
And Phil's a pastor at Christ Community out in Helena now. Was the missions pastor at Oak Mountain Presbyterian for a long time. So it was, and Lyle was married to Luchrista, and so they, and Phil and Lyle had gone to Beeson Divinity School, and so I was kind of tagging along with them, and we end up in Brisbane, and so I was raising support to go there, and our visas weren't coming in, so I graduated in like May of '97, like normal as far as the spring, and we had, I was just going to go straight to Brisbane, basically. So I really wasn't getting a job necessarily or anything. Well, our visas didn't come, and so I ended up with like 6 months there, like really through until December. I was just I ended up having to work, but like I just was kind of hanging out, and so that's when Kelly and I really started connecting. And so it was like, hey, if you say you're going to leave, I was going to go on a 2-year term, like short term thing, and so I was like, yeah, you say you're going to leave the country, then you start deciding, I guess.
Yeah.
You know,
Pressure's on.
Pressure's on.
She's going to disappear if you don't do anything.
I know.
About
I
it.
need to make my move now.
Yeah.
You know,
it's only been 16 years, so it's time to make a move. However old you are after 4th grade.
Right.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. So that was when we really kind of connected.
Okay.
So I go to Australia. That was a bad move. I don't recommend that. I guess y'all are both married, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you're listening, don't go be a missionary by yourself. If you just told your soon-to-be wife that you love her and all these things, it's not a good move. And so I end up going because, then that was kind of really part of the, if I go down a little deeper, that was really part of the people-pleasing.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, my parents were like, hey, you're going to Australia, right?
Right.
And they know Kelly. Like, we grew up. Like, we know.
Yeah.
I know her family. She knew mine. It was like, yeah, you're going to Australia. So I don't know what you're doing with Kelly, but
it's Australia's time right now.
It's you go to Australia. That's what you're doing.
Yeah.
So there was because I remember my dad kind of specifically saying that, and I would have I just could not have and this is a fault, I would say, of mine, was like, I would have thought there's no way I would have not gone. Like, I just was like, I gotta go, like this is a missionary. Like, I can't not go,
Sure.
And so, I went. So I go, and while I ended up being there about a year, Kelly's sister, they were missionaries in Thailand with Campus Outreach.
Okay.
Pete and Shannon Collins, and so Kelly was able to go visit, and she ended up getting to come to Brisbane, and and so to just move faster, I guess. I was going to. My grandmother had died.
Okay.
And she was like my first kind of grandparent that had died, as far as immediate family. And I still don't know who paid for a ticket, but I was able to go home to go to the funeral.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, like, when I did that, and I don't, so Kelly and I ended up getting, like we say we're gonna get, like we end up getting engaged.
Okay.
While you're home for your grandmother's
Yeah.
funeral. That's what you're saying right now.
Well, that's what we were. So, yeah, it's kind of, I'm trying to get this right. So, yeah, so I come home for the funeral and I go back. And so I was talking to our team leader at the time, because we get there first as far as the campus ministry goes, and then our team leader came on afterwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so he came along after, and I didn't really know him before. And so I was talking to him about Kelly, and was like, hey, like because Kelly wanted to be a missionary. And so I was like, we'd love to just come back together. Love Australia, love the college ministry. It's been great. Like, could we just come back together? And he was like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Let's talk about that. Well, so I go home. I go to the funeral, all this stuff. And we do end up getting engaged. Well, so I go back. Well, then I was like, hey, I'll stay, because I said I was going to, be here for 2 years. So I said, I'll stay, but if we could get, if we could get married and then like come back together, that would be ideal.
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's go. Let's talk about that. Well, out of nowhere one day, he kind of just shows up and was like, and you can just, I think you and Kelly should go ahead and get married now. You should just go ahead and do that. And I'm like, he's like, so you can kind of just go home whenever, and focus on Kelly. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, you mean like tomorrow? And he's like, well, you probably couldn't get a plane ticket that fast, but yeah. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? I thought we were,
Yeah.
And so it really came out of left field. And so that was my first, really, conflict that I had, was actually being a missionary.
Yeah.
And so it, because it got like kind of combative with him, and I've never really stood up for myself, right?
Yeah.
And so it was, that was hard. And so I did stand up for myself. Well, so I basically, to kind of just to say it like it happened, I kind of got fired.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, they didn't call it that.
Yeah.
Sure.
But they, you just need to go home and do that and get married. And so, we did not go back to Australia.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So that didn't end up being an option. So we had I ended up getting home, and then we had 5 months basically to get a job and figure out what I was going to do. And so we still thought we were going to be missionaries. Yeah.
I was going to say, I kind of a little bit copied you in a small way. You were saying about don't fall in love and then move away. I started dating my wife in February of 22, who would be my wife. And then in April, she moved to South Africa with CO for the whole summer. So I copied you in a small way. Yeah. But I can't imagine. Well, I was wondering, how do you do long distance with no phones and stuff like that?
Yeah, because this was 1998.
Yeah, because to us it was like
born.
the time difference was annoying. Trying to get on time and FaceTime at the same time, and whenever she has internet and whenever she has electricity. But doing that before the internet and before FaceTime, how does that even work? You're on the other side of the globe.
Yeah, no, so internet was just coming.
Yeah.
We had dial-up internet then, and so we would, I guess we would do that, and then we could talk on the phone, but it wasn't. A lot of email.
Yeah. Was the time difference such that you did have overlap at some point, in the evenings or something like that, where you could call?
Yeah, because I think it was 12, 14 hours. Okay. So it was kind of a good.
Yeah. It was your morning is her night and vice versa or whatever.
Yeah. So it wasn't like you had to be up in the middle of the night kind of thing.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. And then did y'all do letters and stuff? Is that a thing?
We didn't. A lot of emails. Emails.
Yeah.
Did some postcards. You remember those?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So moved back and then trying to figure out what to do next. Trying to plan a wedding, I assume.
Yeah. And so I had the business degree, and
what did she go to school for, Kelly?
She did her master's in education and early childhood development, and so she was going to be a teacher. Yep. So she was teaching or was going to teach.
Yeah.
And so when we got married in May of 1999, and we were trying to figure out the whole missions thing. So when we were first married, what we fought about the most was like if we're going to be missionaries or not.
Yeah,
like, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But the way we both grew up, like we knew how to like answer all the questions and stuff. So we were going to go to they were going to do a New Zealand team with Campus Outreach at one point. And so we kind of looked at that. She loves Asia. Kelly loves Asia. So we were going to do ELIC. We got approved to do that, and I was
English. Wait, what is ELIC?
Yeah,
English language. It's like where you go and teach English.
Yeah. So, which would have been perfect for her. And then they had like an MBA program you could do, and I was like, oh, well, I'll do that, And but we didn't end up doing that. We got approved to do it, and then it was like, man, this is crazy. I don't think And so, and then we landed on Ireland, Dublin, Ireland. Josiah Bancroft, he was with World Harvest Mission, which is now Surge.
Okay.
Great organization. If you're ever going to be a missionary, I would still recommend Surge as a place to check out.
Huh.
We were going to go. I was going to go be.
It's where Dwight Do you know Dwight Castle?
No,
okay. He went with them. It doesn't matter.
Did he really? Yeah. No, great organization. And so we were going to. I was going to be an administrator for their church planting team, and I was trying to sort out this. What do I do? I guess to back up for a second, like I really liked business stuff.
Okay.
But I didn't know what to do about it. Like, and so the friend that was the big Alabama fan that was turning me off, Mr. Adams, he loved cars too, and so like I cut grass to get my first car, and like
What was your first car?
It's 1963 Chevrolet Stepside truck.
Come on.
Yeah,
that's sick.
Yeah, that Mr. Adams helped me get, and so they were always trading and buying and selling, and I was like, man, that's so cool, and I loved that. Yeah. So he kind of taught me how to do that, and so I had seen that, and then I loved talking to just the deacons in the Baptist church case that was like, they were a lot of them
they were business guys,
or doctors or whatever, and so I loved kind of being around that. But I just didn't know what to do with it because it was like, man, I should be a missionary,
Yeah.
And I just didn't know how to handle it. And so we get approved to go to Ireland, and so we start raising support there. And I was so like self-righteous because I was like, man, I don't. They give you a support coach basically, and like you talk to them once a week. And I was like, oh man, this is gonna be terrible. I know how to raise support. I don't need any help. I've already done this. I got this in the bag. So we start. I'm like, this is going to be bad and or annoying. Is what I thought.
Yeah.
And so we start raising support. We get I think like 40%, 45% of our support.
Wow.
And and so what our support coach ended up being a guy that interviewed us, and his name was Dave McCarty. And he ended up being like the best mentor. He just passed away like 3 years ago.
Oh man.
And so that's been that was a big loss. But like he turned into probably one of the most important people in my life.
Wow, how cool!
And so he was helping us think through, kind of talk about all, and especially me, all this business stuff and like what to do with it. And so he came like on one of the calls that we would have, and he was like, Jeff, I don't think you're supposed to be a missionary. I think you're supposed to be in the business world.
Huh.
And it was just
support coach told you that.
Yeah.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah. So I was like, really? Huh. Well, let's, and so we talked about that, and it was just like this weight lifted. And I haven't worried about that since. Like,
wow.
And so he was like, yeah, I think God's calling you to the business world.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but can I do that? Like, what do I do with that? Like, is that okay? Because I kind of just...
It's just such a low view of vocation, just like normal vocation, I guess? Or like, what do you think
Well, it was just, there was such a high regard for just church and activity and just, I got so much like approval from church stuff.
Yeah.
And praise, and I could, I was, everybody told me I did it well, and it was just like, well then... I did want to please God, Of course, I wanted God to use me. That was, and I wanted to, did want to please God and and obey God. And it was like, well, I'll just default to being a missionary,
right?
Because I don't know what else. I don't know. I didn't want to be greedy. I didn't want to,
right?
All those things that were very bad theology.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say when I was growing up, like, I love Jesus, and so I was like, the obvious choice is that I have to go be a pastor, because it's like all my friends who also love Jesus and are super passionate about this, it's like they're going to go off to school and go to seminary. So like to me, it was a similar thing. I was like, the obvious choice is to go do that, but I don't really feel like I want it. Like I don't want to do that, but I just feel like I have to,
Yeah.
And it took me a long time, honestly, kind of a similar path going through college at least. So I guess it was a little earlier than when God revealed that to you. But like I went to school and was like, I like business stuff. Like economics makes a lot of sense to me, and like trying to understand incentives and why people choose to do things, and then slowly learning over time that like you can go into the business world and still be serving God. Like you can go do other things that are not just work in church or be a missionary and still be doing God's will in your life.
Yeah,
that's like a hard thing to like separate in your brain sometimes when you grow up in the church, and that's like integral to your life.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was, it was really bad theology, really, and
sure,
and so that, and so Dave kind of helped me kind of work through that, and
cool.
And so man, and kind of the other part of that was back to the kind of the way I grew up. It was, just parents were super conservative, super savers, and so I just heard. I heard a lot. Be like your brother. My brother's real engineering. He got an engineering degree from Auburn, and then from a graduate degree from Clemson. And so he was probably more like my dad in that sense. And I have one grandfather that was like business minded.
Yeah.
And he was kind of the black sheep of the family.
Yeah.
Turns out, So it was, I don't know. It was just like, don't, just go get a job, stay there.
Yeah.
Buy a house, settle down. The only reason they went for the Australia stuff was because it was mission stuff.
It's Christian.
Right.
Yeah. And Australia's pretty safe. It's like it's pretty Western. It's not like that's like
it's like going to England or just some other country. It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah. So that was no big deal. So I just had all these limitations, I think, in the way that I was thinking as far as I just didn't think. I was like, I just thought I had to kind of fall in line and do what I thought I was supposed to do.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, so Dave really, really helped me start thinking differently about all of that.
Yeah.
What did Kelly think?
Yeah, she was just kind of glad to kind of get past it, because we were really struggling with like what to do.
Yeah.
And she's always been so supportive. Probably to a fault in some ways that we'll keep talking about, but so she she's
kind of like whatever you say, like I'll be 100% behind you.
Yeah, because she always thought she was gonna be a missionary, and so she had to kind of, I think, deal with that too, or think through that as far as like, well, if Jeff's not gonna do that, then I'm not gonna do that now, right?
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
And so so that was I think that was different for her, but she was just good with whatever you think God's calling you to do, let's do that. Let's do it. Let's don't go if we don't need to go.
Totally.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then and so I was let me think. So at Sanford, I had done a banking internship at Southwest Bank. It's no longer around.
Yeah.
But so that's kind of the experience that I had. And again, it was kind of this idea of go work at a bank. That's safe to do. Just go do that.
Yeah.
And so I did that because I had a friend that did an internship for Remax.
Okay.
And I was like, and he had a lot more fun. And but I'm here at this bank. And so that was kind of the experience that I had on my resume. and I had worked at a broker dealer also, Pro Equities. They're part of Protective Life. I think they're still around actually, and so I had some experience. But so when I came back and just needed to get a job, it was like, well, the Regions Bank was a job that was paying the most at the time.
Let's go.
And so I just take that job, and I knew like day one it was in operations, and like that's like the worst place to be in a bank, like if you're and I knew like day one like, oh, this is gonna be bad, but I would never. I didn't. Again, we were so stuck on this missions thing. Like I didn't. I just stayed there and kept working while we kind of worked through all the missions stuff. And then, like, I even had a fraternity friend that got me an interview at Compass Bank. And I don't even think they're around now. I don't know what name they would be, but they merged with, I don't remember. But it was like to be a commercial lender.
Wow.
Which that's
kind of cool.
That's the job you want.
Yeah.
At a bank, right?
Yeah.
And I make it through the interviews and I get offered the job, and the guy, it was like a no-brainer, like, oh yeah, he's totally going to do this because like he's in operations. Like, like
no one wants to do that.
They're saving me, you know? And I remember telling the guy, he looked at me like I was crazy because I was like, man, I'm going to turn this. I told him I wasn't taking the job because I thought I was going to be a missionary. And I didn't want to quit on him in like 6 months.
Yeah.
And I didn't take it. And he looked at me like I was like the dumbest thing. He was like, whatever, man, like you're crazy,
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's funny.
And so that's how stuck I was on this, Yeah.
Dang.
And so Dave helps us work through that. We don't go to Ireland, but I keep talking to Dave. And we talk to him once, at least once a month, if not every 2 weeks, maybe. We probably took a break in there at some point, but basically up until he passed away.
Wow.
I was talking to him.
Wow.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he just stuck with us and stuck with me, especially.
What a great guy.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. And so he, so now I'm at Regions, right? And so, not going to be a missionary at Regions, turn down the good banking job,
Yeah.
And like I get promoted because it's easy to get promoted because it's not like, so I get into this manager position and I get my pay like doubled because they like which still wasn't a whole lot, but they doubled what was there because they were like resizing salaries and things. And it was just like, yeah, what I do now? I'm like stuck in this terrible job. Like I remember my manager, I was trying to make things better, and I love reading biographies, and so I'm listening to all these like Warren Buffett books and Sam Walton books and all these people that started all these great companies, Richard Branson and all these people. And so I'm going to go in there and change this department. And my manager literally was like, yeah, Jeff, don't do any of that. Like, don't just keep things the way they are. Don't change anything.
Yeah.
Like it was so dumb, So I was like, man, the cool part was I was like, okay, well, if I'm not going to be a missionary or be a pastor, then I'll just assume that I'm going to be this. I was quote unquote, successful in ministry,
Sure.
And so I'll just be a successful Christian businessman. Like, that's perfect. Like all these guys in the church, right?
Sure.
All these deacons and now elders as a good PCA.
Yeah.
And and it was like, all right, that's perfect. That's what we'll do. So I wanted to be. I knew I didn't like Regions, and so I was like, man, I want to be a business owner. And so but we didn't have any money. And that's a problem.
That is helpful to have money if you're gonna run a business.
Yeah. And so, I've never been afraid to talk to people, so I would just go talk to anybody. And even at that bank internship, I walked up like I was in marketing for part of the time, and we were on the floor. We were in the Southwest Tower, so that the shipped tower now. So we were in the floor below. Marketing was in the floor below Wallace Malone, which at the time was the chairman and CEO of the bank, like the top guy.
Wow.
And so I had all this free time, and so I was like, I'm gonna walk up there, and So I go up there, didn't tell any of my people, which is, the banking people can be weird about that.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's
hierarchy of order
it's
and
real
whatever.
Political,
Yeah.
So I just go up there and walk out, and this old man comes out of the hall, and I'm off the elevator, and he was like, "Can I help you, son?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm here to see Wallace Malone." And he was like, "Well, you got him."
That was him?
That was him.
That's awesome.
And so, like, I would just go, and I was like, well, I was so full of it, like in the sense of so self-righteous, because I was like, I want to see what my office is going to look like one day.
Sure. Right.
And he was like, and he was like, he talked to me for a minute and was like, why don't you just go back down tomorrow? He was nice. He was nice. But I wasn't afraid to talk to people, and so I was talking to all these business owners. I would call these business brokers and franchises and all these different things. And one business broker was like, oh man, you need $50,000. Like you're going to at least need that. So kind of, if you get $50,000, then come back and talk to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was like, all right, I'll start saving $50,000, And so I liked cars, and so I ended up getting my dealer's license when I was at the bank, like in 2004. And so, and then we did a couple of rental houses. I had one friend that was a mentor that was a commercial real estate guy. And so we helped me. We ended up with like 3 like rental properties. 2 of them were like zoned. Like we got them zoned commercial.
Okay, cool.
And so we did that, and then we were just trying to save money. So like I sold like 25 cars in 2004.
Wow.
Kind of while working at Regions.
Yeah.
Just trying to save.
Yeah.
And then it was just fun because I could drive what I was selling.
Yeah.
And get something else. So that was cool. But so we kind of get $50,000, and he's like, I go back, and he's like, oh yeah, that's not enough. You're not gonna be able to buy anything with that, So I was like, man, what's
Yeah.
Well, so the part that I haven't said yet is about Kelly's dad. So he was a McDonald's franchise owner, operator up in Decatur, and so we and again, I've known Kelly since the 4th grade, knew her family. He was always kind of the McDonald's guy. The kind of the successful Christian businessman, in
Decatur,
Decatur royalty with the McDonald's
totally.
and all,
yeah,
small town, and so kind of out of nowhere, like it was always his thing. Kelly just has one sister too that's older, that's like my brother's age, so we were similar, in that sense, and it was never like I just never thought assumed I would have anything to do with that. It just was his thing. He always just did it. It just wasn't. Never crossed my mind.
Yeah.
And so he ends up out of nowhere he kind of was like, man, you're gonna do something, aren't you? Because I would try to ask him some questions, and it'd get a little weird. Yeah. Because he had all this experience and business experience, but it was just weird.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at these Midas franchises one time.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to stick to this car theme. And and he was like, man, you're going to do something, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, I'm doing something. I can't stay at this bank. I don't want to do this corporate world.
Just trying to figure out what the thing is.
Corporate world. Well, so out of nowhere, really out of Kelly's sister's prompting, he asked me to come do McDonald's.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, wow, man, yeah. This is it. I'm going to be a successful Christian businessman.
Yeah.
This is my path, and so then he likes cars and had all these fancy cars, and of course he's done well, and so it was like, how could I not do that?
Yeah.
Got to do that.
Yeah.
And Kelly was, I knew him as the Sunday school teacher, as the small town.
Yeah.
Christian business guy. And she was like, Jeff, you're not going to like working for him. Like I can tell you, it's totally different. And we had just moved into this house off of 119.
Yeah.
And that she loved. And we had just had our oldest son. We hadn't talked about that. We have 3 kids, a boy, girl, boy.
Okay.
Huh. And so she loved that. And if I would have been paying attention, like I had the dealer's license thing. I had a guy helping me with like real estate. Mm-hmm. And I just saw dollar signs and fancy cars and was like, Kelly, I can't get a McDonald's franchise. Like, how you don't get these chances? I got to at least go try it, you know?
Yeah,
sure. And she was like, well, I'll go, but you're not, I don't think this is a good idea.
Yeah.
So that was the first big lesson is listen to your wives. if you're not, or if you don't, listen to your wives, you know? I was so like selfish, you know, and so one track minded. So you can see where this is going.
Yeah.
And so she would like, I mean, she was crying every night or most nights, and just was like, this is not, you know. And I was like, man, we got to do it. So I turn in my notice at Regions, and of course they bless it, you know, because it's like owning McDonald's, you know, so they even get that, you know, from a worldly perspective. It was like, oh, yeah, you got to go do that.
Right.
You know? And so I start working. I had never done fast food.
You moved to Decatur?
Well,
or did you open one up here?
Well, no. So we were still in Birmingham, and I had never done fast food. I'd cut grass, I think, like I mentioned, but I had never done fast food. Well, so Mr. Walter didn't want me to come into his stores with no experience.
Yeah.
And so it's like a little club with these operators. And so the guy here was Max Cooper. He had like 40 stores.
Wow.
And it was you go work in his stores while you're still in Birmingham and kind of get your feet wet and start learning the business.
Yeah.
You worked at McDonald's.
Oh, I did everything. Like I did everything. I cleaned bathrooms.
That is awesome.
I cleaned bathrooms. Like
Does he still own all the ones in Birmingham?
Well, he died. He passed away. He was like 98 when he finally died.
Wow.
Yeah. So, we were off of 119, and I would drive out to this Trustful store.
Yeah.
And have to be there like at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
To like open the store and learn how to do that, and did the fries, did everything, every position.
Yeah.
And so the way McDonald's works is like, well, I needed to do it because I didn't know the business.
Sure.
Yeah.
But then they have a second generation operator program.
Oh, okay.
That you can get it accepted to, but it is real political.
Okay.
Because there's like a list long. At least there was, you know, as far as to get a McDonald's, and then they're real. Yeah, it's real. So you don't, even just because you have money, you might not necessarily get one.
Right. Sure.
You know, like so you have to get accepted into this program.
Right.
Right. And so I'm working here, figuring out how to do that. We do end up moving to Decatur, and then he still didn't want me in his stores. And so now I'm driving to Huntsville. And working for that operator, you know, just to learn more, you know. So I'm driving from Decatur to Huntsville, and and I end up getting into the second generation operator program, and the business itself, it wasn't so bad. Like it was doable, but Kelly was right. Like it was it was hell.
Really,
the dynamics
with your father-in-law,
with my father-in-law, and so I think this is where. And this is what I ultimately get passionate about, which thanks for letting me take the long version.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah,
the long version
take us
here.
all the way.
Yeah,
because what I didn't, you know, the way I grew up and the church involvement and all of that, and was so, you know, I thought I was doing all these great things, you know, and thought I was bringing all this to the table for God, basically, and doing all these, you know, great, you know, good things or whatever.
Sure.
And then McCarty came along, Dave McCarty came along, you know, man, I don't think you're supposed to be a missionary. I think you're supposed to be in the business world. And it was just like, God, you know, my version was, now I'm going to be a McDonald's operator. He had 12 stores. So there was a bunch of them. And it was like, I'm going to go do that. And it was just like, God was like, no, I'm going to teach you something different, Jeff.
Huh.
And so it was just like my path, I think, to just, for me, it's my vocation has been just how God has really drawn me to himself, just really through kind of brokenness and just hard stuff.
Yeah.
And he's used my vocation to do that, you know. Yeah. And so that's really the story of Decatur. You know, there were a lot of again, the McDonald's people liked me, and I was able to get into that program, but the dynamics were terrible. He had some people that had worked for him forever, and so they were really loyal to him, which was awesome. But I could go on a rabbit trail just about how people are treated, and you can see it in McDonald's. It's obvious, right? But if you read about Ray Kroc, you have to do that in that program. I went to Chicago and did the McDonald's University and all that stuff. Yeah, all that stuff's real. Yeah, and they.
I recently watched the movie they did about him, the founder.
Oh, it's real. It's true.
Yeah.
So it's just like
Fascinating.
that. It's just like that. So, and that's the thing that was kind of eye opening. The culture that is created, and that's what I didn't really like about Regions. I didn't like the corporate culture. Like, it's a great place to work, so it's a good company, but there's something, culture was real important. That's what I didn't really end up liking about Australia.
Yeah.
Like, the version of discipleship that I was seeing there was totally opposite.
Yeah.
Of kind of how I grew up.
Completely. Yeah.
And I knew that. That's why I was so adamant with the team leader, because it was like, no, I know what good discipleship is. Like, I've been that disciple, that's why I love God, and that was one reason I kind of stood up to him, because it was like, no, this is not right, right. And it just, and so culture is a big deal to me, I would say. And so it was just the people. And so I think this guy named Max was running all his stores, and he was so loyal. And he would just berate the people.
Really?
And it was bad. And so, and I knew my place, because it was like, it was my father-in-law's money, his stores. That was obvious. I didn't have any money, so it was like, I'll just do it. I'll suck it up and do it, because I'm going to have the chance to, basically he was like, you can be my retirement plan.
Yeah.
Sure. And it was like, man, well, who wouldn't want to do that?
Right. Right.
But it was just, it got so bad with the way that this guy was kind of treating the people, and the version that I saw.
Yeah.
And I would go question things, like with Kelly's dad, and he was like, Jeff, why are you bothering me, man? Just do what I say. Max does everything does what I say, and
right.
Just leave me alone. Why are you trying to rock the boat?
Yeah, a lot of people don't like when you ask why something is done the way that it is.
No, especially if they're the big guy in a small town. Right?
100%.
And so it was
it's the way that it is, because it's always been that way.
Right. That's what nobody questioned
him, and it works.
Nobody questioned him. Nobody. Nobody questioned him.
Yeah.
Which led to a lot of other problems. But
fascinating.
Yeah, and so he. And so it got so bad, like it's like God kept kind of turning up the heat, on me. Really, I don't want to make this about Max, or even Kelly's dad. It was more about like God turning up the heat, I think, on me, just to make it obvious, because I wasn't going to leave. I wouldn't have left. Yeah. But it got so bad. One day. Saturday morning breakfast, I was the interstate store at Athens, exit 351 if you're going to Nashville.
Yeah.
That McDonald's there at the interstate was my home. And so Saturday mornings were busy because it's all interstate.
Yeah.
And breakfast is a big deal. Well, there was this kid had a starter earring. And Max was like, saying he would just take these terrible moments to kind of prove a point. Mm-hmm. And so we're like slam busy. And he's like, Jeff, you need to go. Did you know? I don't remember the kid's name, but he was like, did you see that? You see that kid over there? He's got an earring. And I'm like, yeah, Max, let's deal with that later. Like, it's kind of busy right now. And he, no, Jeff, they're not supposed to have earrings when they're working. And I'm like, I know, but let's get this business out first, right? Isn't it kind of busy right now? And he's like, no, you need to deal with this right now. He kept like pressing me, like in the middle of all this chaos, basically, right? Like
I was going to say, I worked at Chick-fil-A in high school, so I know that's chaos.
Oh, and then, it's like your normal McDonald's experience. You're on the other side waiting, right? So you just see all this chaos. And he was so adamant that, like, no, you need to deal with this right now. And because I was like, I got so upset. I got so, like, angry. And I was like, do you want me to deal with it right now? I'll deal with it right now. And so I go over to this poor little kid and was like, you're fired. Get out of here. Because I was like, because I had part of the exchange was I had told him to take his earring out. I was like, hey man, just take your earring out when we calm down. It's no big deal. Just, you're doing a good job. And Max didn't believe me. He was like, you can't, you're not a good leader. He didn't go take that earring out,
Yeah.
And I was like, you want me to deal with it? I was like, Max, he said he would take it out. It's no big deal, And he's like, no, man, you don't know how to deal with people. You need to settle this right now. And so I was like, okay, I'll settle it. So I walk up to the kid, poor little kid, and was like, you're fired. Get out of here.
Yeah.
And then I turned to Max and was like, are you happy now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he was kind of like, yeah, that's what you got to be like, And so later, when all the dust settled, it was like, I was like, man, Max, like, because of course he tells Kelly's dead and all this, and so he would come and try to get this story and all this. And so it was like, okay, guys, like, I'll do whatever you say, but I'm not going to do that. Like, you can't talk to me like that. Like I get my place here, but I can't do that.
Yeah.
And it just went kind of, it was like God just kept kind of raising the pressure. Like, is this really what you're looking for?
Right.
Yeah. Because he would do things like they were, he liked cars a lot. And so he had like a brand new, he had these Ferraris and he had like a brand new 911 Carrera S convertible at the time that he had just gotten, like black with black top. And he would
What year is this?
2004, so 2004.
Yeah, I'm just trying to picture.
Yeah.
Picture the cars.
Well, so he would do these weird things like show up at like the busy times like that, and he'd have this yellow memo pad, and he could sit there and prepare all day because he was doing whatever he wanted. This is Kelly's dad, and then he would just show up and like, hey, I got a few things for you, Jeff, and he would just read down this list, and you're like, what, like, and then he would like feel bad.
Yeah.
And then he would like, Jeff, man, you can take you worked really hard, that was, and why don't you just take the Porsche and you can just go drive it around and do whatever you want, just bring it back whenever. And you're like, really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so I'm driving around in this Porsche, and I'm like, wait, what just happened? This is terrible.
Yeah.
Like,
that's so funny.
And so it was kind of like, this is empty.
Yeah.
This is totally empty.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I think, again, the point is not so much to talk like I don't want to. I want to make it more about my what I was learning.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like, man, this is not life at all.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So it got so bad, I ended up quitting with no job, no plan. That's another bad idea. I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah.
I had the McDonald's guys tell me I was approved like to own a store. And we did end up getting like 10% of the Dodge City store, which is the other end, closer to Birmingham, exit 299, that gas station store. If you're going to Smith Lake that way, that McDonald's there. We're the proud 10% owners of that store.
Yeah.
Let's go.
And
I've gotten on the way to Smith Lake before, so.
Yeah. So
a true patron right here.
I've given you $2 before.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well, no, so the funny part is we never made any money. So, all that money we'd saved, and we buy a nice house in Decatur because in Birmingham we had fixed up a foreclosure, and so we had gone through like right after Hunter was born, and we were like remodeling the kitchen and all these things. Not really wasn't a good idea either as far as a newborn.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, we're going to get a new house. We're going to be loaded. I'm not going to worry about it because I won't have time to deal with it. I'm going to work. Uh-huh. So in 2004, you don't buy an expensive house in Decatur. It might be different now. I don't know. It's got a new slogan, so maybe it is. But it took 3 years to sell that house because it was when we ended up leaving was like 07, 08.
Oh.
So we timed that right with the housing.
Yeah, absolutely perfect.
Yeah, that was dead on. And
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, so we ended up losing that $50,000 that we had saved.
Yeah.
And so I started driving back and forth because we were like, well, if we're not going to be in Decatur for that, we're definitely not going to stay in Decatur. And so we were like, we want to be back in Birmingham, and we liked Oak Mountain Presbyterian.
Yeah,
we had been there. We liked our life group and stuff, and so I start driving back and forth as kind of as a last hope to do the franchise that's just over here, that's next door to us here, that was going to sell car parts, and so we could. and we wanted to try to use our own money. And so the cool part was I figured out kind of like what wouldn't work with franchises, as far as like I saw like this McDonald's great model, successful franchise. And then I was trying this other little startup because that's what we could try to afford. And I was trying to go back to the car theme, and I kind of figured out into that it wasn't really going to make enough money to matter. Like it was like, this is not going to be worth it.
Yeah.
And we were going to be signing our life away. So I needed to work. And so I was like, hey, will y'all let me sell this for you? And, we're not going to buy it, but would you let me sell it for you?
Sell the car part business?
Or just the franchise.
Okay.
So I stayed there and got him to pay me like $1,000 a week to help sell it.
Yeah.
And I knew as soon as I sold it, it was like that was going to be a problem, or it sold, and so it did end up selling. So they're like, yep, Jeff, you're out. And so then now I'm scrambling again, like what do I do? So it was like a last resort. I call my old boss back at Regions. He's, from 1999.
So wait, this is 08.
This would be 08, 09,
yeah.
Which is not a good time for banking.
No.
Yeah, and he's still there. Like, so Regions had merged with AmSouth.
Yep.
Uh-huh. And so, but it was all AmSouth people, but the Regions name. Well, he was a Regions guy, so all the Regions management people they were all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Chris Chapman was still there.
Yeah.
And so he was in technology now.
Yeah.
And he knew I had left, So he was like, man, Jeff, you just need a job, don't you?
Yeah.
And because he's like, man, I'm in IT. I run like a project management office.
Yeah.
I was like, Chris, I don't know anything about technology, or I'm not. And he's like, it's okay, man. You can figure it out,
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, you just need a job. And I was like, yeah, I just need a job.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm getting an opening. Let me see what's going to happen. Well, so in the meantime, am I doing okay here? You want me to keep going?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because this is so. In the meantime, we're back at Oak Mountain, and there's several stories I could tell, but we're back at Oak Mountain, and so I'm telling our life group that, hey, I could get a job back at Regions. Y'all can pray for that, or whatever. Well, Rodney Beasley, the guy that was leading our life group, he's like, man, I had a friend at AmSouth, or I do have a friend at AmSouth. Let me tell him, what you're doing, because I'm sure I think he's moved up a lot, send me your resume, but he said, send it to me in an email that I can just send it straight to this guy, write it as, say what you've done, who you've talked to, and attach your resume, and I'm just going to forward it straight to him.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, got it. Sure, whatever, Rodney. I don't know anybody at AmSouth. Who is this guy? Well, after that, Chris calls me back, my old manager, and was like, man, I don't know what you've done, but you've got an interview. And then he's like, can you come in this afternoon?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. What happened?
Yeah.
And he was like, we got your resume. My boss got your resume. Like it came down from Grayson Hall. And I was like, who's Grayson Hall?
The owner.
And he's like he's the chairman of the bank, Jeff. And I'm like, really?
Wow.
That's like the guy that was the AmSouth.
The AmSouth guy
came over.
Yeah. So he was chairman.
Dang.
So he was like chairman of the whole thing. Got all the way up to the top.
Ron at Pebblehurst. A friend of ours is best friends with that guy's son.
Okay.
Very random. But
yeah.
Anyways.
Okay. Well, yeah. So Rodney was buddies with Grayson Hall.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is that? And so Chris is telling me, like, Jeff, man, you got to be kidding me.
Wow. That's crazy.
I learned that he's one of the 15 members in Birmingham. 15 members of Augusta National.
Grayson Hall is?
Wow.
Yes. There you go.
That's crazy.
That is crazy.
That's pretty nuts.
That is crazy.
Okay, so I'm so dialed in. Keep going.
So I get an interview.
Okay.
And as dumb as banks are, like when it comes to the politics and all of that, I could have, dressed up as like a chicken and walked in there and gotten a job because of the way it came down, Wow. And I didn't, but it was just God protecting us, right? Because it was like, I started like January 1st or whatever it was, the first Monday of like 2009.
Wow.
And he even said in his reply, because I saw Rodney sent me back his email, and he's like, hey, thanks, Rodney. I don't know. I can share the resume, but I don't really know what we might have right now, because, it was written really well,
Yeah.
Sure. But it just said Grayson Hall. It didn't say his title. He didn't have anything on there. It just said like Grayson Hall, Regions Bank,
Yeah.
But I was like, man, that was really well written, and then it turns out.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, I ended up going back to Regions as a technology project manager. And so, in 2009. And so that was really just God's provision. And so part of the whole brokenness, though, just kept kind of going, because even then, like, I was so prideful. And I think that's just what I would want you to hear is it's that, like, I thought I was doing, I think, everything right. Like, and was just so prideful about it all. Because then I was arrogant enough to, like, I'm going to prove Mr. Walter wrong. Like, I'm going to show him that I don't need McDonald's, I don't need him, like, I can do this on my own, and now here I am. So I was kind of crawling back to Regions, the place I said I'd never go back to, and then I immediately felt like way better than everybody, because it was like, y'all don't know who I am, like, I was a big deal in Decatur, like, I was, like, people treated me like royalty, and then now I'm like looked at like, why did we just hire this guy that worked at McDonald's to be a technology,
That's funny.
Like, I got looked down on so much because, like, you worked at McDonald's? Like, what'd you do at McDonald's? Like, like, because, and it was like, you don't know who I am, like,
right.
Sure.
So I was so full of it and so obnoxious. So fast forward to keep going here. Like, I loved the time at Pro Equities when I was there, and which was the broker dealer that I mentioned. And so I loved, like, part of what I've learned about all the business stuff. And so I got to see a good franchise, like I said. I got to see a small franchise that wasn't a good idea. So I kind of learned that. I had seen what a corporate world was like as far as a big public company.
Yeah.
With Regions. And I just loved analyzing businesses and got into kind of stock market.
Yeah,
and I had taken a stock class.
I was curious if this was about to go into lending.
So we're going somewhere.
Yeah.
I'm going somewhere.
Yeah.
I promise.
Yeah.
I promise. And so I start learning. Well, I had, like, so even back in the .com, I was around then, because that was like 98, 99. That was like back in the Australia time. You could buy anything and it'd go up. And so, of course, everybody thought they were a genius.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so back, and then when I came back to Regions, and I was like, man, what am I going to do? Like, now I'm stuck back in this cubicle, or I don't even have an office. I'm stuck in this cubicle, you know? And so I just start trying to trade stocks. And I had tried to do that even when I knew I wasn't going to do the radiator franchise, the car parts thing. And it was like, of course, most stories that you'll hear about trading stocks is that you start out like doing pretty good and you think you're like, the next, Warren Buffett.
Yeah.
And then it just is
like terrible.
And then it's terrible. Yeah.
It's all red.
It's all red. So I was in that stage of, I'm going to be the next Warren Buffett.
Yeah. Is this 09 to 2010?
Yeah.
Like that time period?
Yeah. Tons of volatility.
I was going to say this is more technical, but like, how did you trade stocks at that point? Because like now you can just get Robinhood or something.
So I was so like consumed with it. I had y'all remember Palm Pilots?
Yeah. My dad had one of those.
Yeah. iPhones weren't around yet.
Yeah.
I would connect through a log me in. I would like basically connect to my home computer on through this Palm Pilot.
Yeah.
Wow.
And look at charts that I had on my computer screen.
Yeah.
And scroll back and forth on the little Palm Pilot screen.
Yeah. That's crazy.
And trade.
Yeah.
Trade stocks.
Crazy.
In between meetings, walking down the hall, I would go to the bathroom and act like I was going to the bathroom and was pulling that thing up. Wow. It was bad. And so, I just was slowly losing money and still didn't really get it.
Yeah.
And it was just like death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Sure. So this takes us to like 2015 and it's better because I'm in technology. That was more interesting. I was able to figure out the technology stuff enough to, wing my way through it. and so it wasn't near as bad, as badly as far as
touch screen, faster internet. Didn't have to scroll with the Palm Pilot anymore.
iPhones came out.
Right.
iPhones came out.
It didn't take you 30 minutes to submit a trade offer.
Well, and so I ended up losing all this money. Yeah, I ended up losing all the money we had left. I had a 401k that was from Regions. Lost all of it. It was all gone.
Dang.
And so it was like, okay, I need to probably do something about this. This is not working.
Yeah.
And so what I kind of discovered through a Bible study with Phil Chambers, the guy that was in Australia with.
He's back in Birmingham at that point? Or at this point? Yeah.
Was through the process there it was like, man, I had to kind of admit that I had a problem, and just to be frank, I haven't really had an alcohol problem.
Yeah.
I haven't really had a pornography problem. But I had a trading problem.
Yeah.
I was totally.
I mean, it's kind of adjacent to gambling in a way.
I was just totally addicted to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Big time. And so I would go to work. I would get frustrated. I'd get there around 8:15. The market would open at 8:30, and I would be frustrated by 8:45. And I could kind of wing my job, and I would just sit there and focus on the stock market.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I kind of had to realize I had a problem,
Yeah.
Fascinating.
And just admit that I had a problem. And so I did. And it was like, man, I need to just kind of abstain from this, and stop and kind of deal with my reality of kind of where I am, what's going on. Our oldest son, Hunter, we figured out he had epilepsy.
Oh.
Kelly was having some autoimmune health issues back then. And it was kind of like God was had me at Regions because I needed to be at Regions because it was it was easy. I could leave 8 to 5.
Yeah.
But I was so consumed with, being there and how I was going to get out of there that I just couldn't really, focus on anything else.
Huh.
And so that's where just the gospel started kind of really kicking in. For me through this time frame, still talking to McCarty, and he's telling me all this stuff, and I'm like, I don't know, and it's just like, you're a worse, sinner than you think you are. Yeah. Jesus is way underrated. Jesus is the pearl of great price.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I get it. But he really wasn't. And so I had to kind of see that. And confess that and see that, I definitely have these idols, and I need to, kind of see my own sin for what it is.
Sure.
And kind of quit blaming everybody else, and deal with it myself. So I'm still kind of dealing with that, I don't think you ever stop that.
Yeah.
But it's been a huge process, and so I stopped trading, and for really 2016 did nothing but went to work and just was like, all right, let me just be present at work and try to deal with my reality of I'm at Regions, and this is terrible, and I got to be okay with it, and so I didn't know, kept talking to McCarty, and I didn't know what to do with all this stock market stuff because I did really like the businesses and evaluating businesses. I was good at that. And so he helped me kind of step back and look at okay, well, what are you good at? And what is sustainable?
Yeah.
Maybe not day trading in a cubicle, and it was after, by the end of that, of 2016 and into 2017, June 1st, I was kind of not just him, but a few others were like, well, Jeff, why don't you put together some money and just manage it, from a longer term perspective. And so June 1st, 2017, I started Fish Creek Capital.
Okay.
And so to John's point, I was a hedge fund manager.
Yeah.
I didn't really know it and didn't really mean to be, but I had the perfect structure as far as a Delaware partnership, and then I was managing pooled securities, and because of all this, culture kind of this passion that I had about just building the culture and people and what I wanted that to kind of be like. I went real narrow with who I was talking to, and so I didn't want to. I had other kind of opportunities back from Decatur to do insurance and things like that with some other family business stuff. Not my family, but others. And so I didn't want to be salesy, and I didn't want it to, I kind of wanted it to sell itself. I knew what it was like to be treated if, like someone thought you were going to have money,
Yeah.
And I didn't like that, and so I just didn't want to go after people because of their money.
Sure.
Because I did get to see what that was like for a brief moment.
Yeah.
And then, and so I just went real narrow, 10 people. And Warren Buffett had started his partnership back in the 50s. He did 10 people, and he did like $100,000, like $10,000 a piece. And I don't really agree with Warren Buffett other than his investing style, maybe.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I was like, I'm going to do that,
Uh-huh.
And so that's what I did. I did 10 people, $10,000, which was crazy. John was one of those.
Wow.
And so he did 20,000.
Yeah.
And so I ended up with $110,000.
Wow.
and started Fish Creek Capital. So I had the perfect structure. I didn't really realize it because you need a securities attorney when you're doing like a partnership and things for pooled securities. Well, nobody will talk to you if you tell them, you don't have any money, to do it. And so I used my Regions experience to I did find a lawyer, and he helped with the partnership documents, but I ended up having to go through the state registration process with the Alabama Securities Commission, and I ended up creating all the documents myself because I just kept getting laughed at by these securities attorneys.
So you were your own lawyer.
Well, I created the documents. I was able to, because I knew how to at least speak the language from Regions with compliance and all these things. And so I got the documents and formed them and ended up going through that whole registration process myself because I didn't have another option.
Yeah.
And so I basically ended up with the perfect structure and no money.
Yeah.
And kind of started Fish Creek Capital. And so that led to, but I did want it to kind of keep, looking back, I wish it didn't have to start that way because it's pretty hard to do that way.
Yeah.
Especially in the finance world.
Sure.
But it's worked. In January 17th, 2022, I was able to leave Regions.
Wow.
I wanted Regions to be my last kind of full-time job.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so it was. So super thankful for that.
Yeah.
So I'm still small, but we've crossed over the 10 million mark,
Wow.
which is super small.
That's insane growth, though.
It's super small. Like it's super small in this world.
Yeah.
Like really
in the
small.
finance world.
Yeah. Really small.
I'll tell you one world I don't swim in is the finance world. So anyways.
That's crazy.
But awesome. I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it because of just the way it started.
Absolutely. It's difficult to grassroots a hedge fund.
Well,
That's
it's not
crazy.
family money. And so it's kind of grown organically and slowly, and it's been way slower than I would have wanted, but I have learned to and still am learning to just not let that be my identity. I think that's been my biggest lesson that I think I have to daily deal with is like my vocation is not my identity in the sense of it doesn't define me ultimately.
Yeah.
Now and McCarty really helped me work through the whole business world. I can talk a lot about that too, as far as it's definitely just as important, as far as ministry and and I was able to use even the people that I started with, some are non-Christians, some are Christians, some have a lot of money, some don't. There's a nonprofit guy in there. And it was, so just kind of, we'll see where it goes, but I love it. Thankful for it.
Yeah.
And, so it's been a long journey, to kind of get to where I am.
Yeah.
But slowly just building relationships and trying to help people.
That's amazing. Wow. So what does the business model look like for that? So are you charging a percentage fee of earnings, or are you charging a flat rate fee for management, or what does that look like?
Yeah, so from the partnership, the problem with that was like it was too small. And so once I got registered, the compliance, the regulatory stuff on the compliance side is way, it's just too expensive. Like when you're pulling securities, like I could be Bernie Madoff, like you could run off. And so there's a lot more rules around that. And so it wasn't really going to be cost effective to keep doing that.
Okay.
And so another kind of God's provision, one of the guys that came and did an audit with the Alabama Securities Commission, they just show up, like they just kind of show up, like, and it was so intimidating.
Yeah.
His name's Spencer Lee, and he did the Morgan Keegan audit. Like, I don't know if y'all remember Morgan Keegan.
Yeah.
Like, they went through a bunch of fraud.
Yeah.
And he was a part of that. Like, so he was like, man, he scared me to death. Well, he ended up turning into like a friend somehow.
Cool.
That's crazy.
And so they were like super helpful, because I was like, hey, I'm not going away. I've gotten this far. You just tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. Like, you can't get rid of me now. You know? And so he was like, well, Jeff, don't do what you're doing. Do like managed accounts.
Okay.
And so so I switched to managed accounts. And then that's when I really started growing. Because now it's like, so it's an account, like I work with Schwab and Interactive Brokers.
Yeah.
And so like you would have an account in your name.
Yeah.
And then I just manage it.
Okay.
And
yes, that makes sense.
I can't take it, or, and so it's fee based.
Right.
Most of it's fee based. I have a performance fee on a couple of accounts.
Cool.
With some real aggressive guys. But yeah, so I've helped people like, look at apartments as far as analyzing
like real estate investments and stuff.
Just because anything. I just love helping people with any kind of investment, really.
Yeah. Sure.
Looking for ways. And so I focus on dividend growth portfolios, basically, from my side of the equity side. I think you need... we're all after cash flow at the end of the day.
Right.
And so I think there's a place for equities, and then I do like real estate, so I think there's a place for both. And so on the equity side, I think that one of the best ways to do that is through like dividend growth.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I focus on from the main strategy perspective.
Yeah. Was it scary going out on your own and finally quitting?
No. I don't know if I really thought about it.
Okay.
Because I was so ready for it, and kind of so done with the corporate world that I was just excited, maybe a little, I don't know, overly confident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think you kind of have to be a little bit to some degree. You have to have the confidence that you're going to go out and do the thing. Otherwise, you're up a creek.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a little nerve wracking, but and that. Oh, as I've learned, but yeah. And so it's
what's what do you think the dream is for Fish Creek?
Yeah, so I'm from just a business perspective, I'd love to just keep growing. Ideally in this world, less is more. So I'd rather have less relationships with more money, right?
Right.
So I'm registered from a state perspective. You can. I'm good up until 100 million.
Okay.
And then once you get to 100 million, you switch over to the SEC. So then you're federally.
Okay. Gotcha.
Then you're federally registered.
Yeah.
And so the cool part is the sky's the limit on that.
Yeah.
And so it's really just kind of. I haven't really done much marketing, so I am kind of learning how to do some of that.
Sure.
I do need to do that. Like, you just can't ignore it. But in a perfect world, I would just kind of keep growing. I've got some great relationships that I love working with now. I just, so I'd love to keep the kind of the boutique approach to it.
Yeah.
But there's the practical part of, okay, we probably do need to grow some because it is nice to eat.
Yeah. Food is nice. Taking your family on a vacation is nice every once in a while.
Yeah. And so growing is important.
Yeah. What is that? So it's just you right now.
Yeah.
Running the shop. Yeah. What does that look like as you grow and get bigger? Is there a certain point where you have to start hiring like assistants and like other managers? What is that?
Yeah.
I'm just not as familiar with.
Right
yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So I'm like a solo advisor is what you would say.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I'm not as familiar with like financial business, money management business models and stuff.
Yeah. So no, it's a good model. Like it's actually a great model if you can. So what generally happens is you start out at a bank even or a brokerage, and you're 20 years old,
right?
And you just like grind it out, and you grow really through the recognition. They give you names to call, and then you've got the bank recognition or whatever by kind of you know, but you still just kind of have to. It's brutal in the sense of you're just kind of cold calling, grinding it out. The other way the people kind of do it is they've got some kind of nest egg or, you know, some connection that gives them an ability to start. Yeah. You know, with an amount of money that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you'll see a lot of people not make it just because it is kind of a grind in that sense. So I'm super thankful to get as far as I've gotten, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I haven't had that nest egg or, you know.
You didn't have an Uncle Rich.
Yeah, no one relationship. That,
yeah.
You know, so that's what
you own 10% of the Dodge City McDonald's, though. So
you should have bought more. You should have got one more double cheeseburger.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah. Funny. So that's what you kind of see.
Yeah.
So ideally, you've got that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
That's the best case scenario.
Right.
You know,
I'm curious too. Like you know the the ministry aspect of it too. Like you spent. I think it's so cool how you spent so much of your time and your story talking about relationship with God. And I mean, I think, the Tozer, how you answer the question, what's God like, is the most important question, the most important answer in your whole life, right? And you have kind of found this relationship with your God that is like, you've kind of, in a lot of ways, it sounds like you've turned God into who he explains he is. And I think that's really cool. So I wanted to say thank you for sharing that. But also, I imagine that makes you kind of amazing to work with now because you've worked through a lot of bad versions of yourself. Like, do you enjoy, so it is kind of great. Like, how do you enjoy the relational side? Because you're not getting to do, missions, or you're not a pastor, but you're still, you get to work with people, and you are influenced by the love of Christ. Like, what is it like to pursue those relationships now? I imagine it's so fun that you get. Is it still 10 people, or is it way more than that now?
It's more, maybe it's like 35, 40.
Yeah, you see, you have 35 or 40 people that you have trusting relationships with. Do you enjoy that now? Have you kind of felt freedom to begin enjoying that? And I don't know, ministerial is probably the wrong word to the wrong person hearing this, but in a lot of ways, you are kind of doing ministry, you're becoming minus, you're serving. So what's that like?
No, I love it. I love that. I think God is actually, that's the funny thing McCarty used to say. He's like, maybe God is actually, orchestrating this, Jeff. Just maybe he knows.
Maybe
he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's just on his timeline, and not yours.
Yeah.
And so I love. That's why I again, that's the hard part about the business side of it, is because that's where I like being smaller.
Yeah.
And just have been more trusting on my better days as far as growth, with trusting God for that.
Yeah.
Because I love the relationships, and again, not everybody believes what I believe that I'm working with, which I like. I think that's important, because that just gives me chances from a church perspective, from a gospel perspective, from a Jesus perspective. I think people have the wrong version of that.
Sure.
In most cases, 99% of the time.
Yeah.
They've got the wrong version of what they're looking for.
Sure.
They do think they have to do all the right things or clean themselves up or look a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the exact opposite of what, Jesus is looking for.
Right.
And I love the fact that I can talk with people in different scenarios that are outside of the church. Of course, church is important.
Sure.
We love church. We go to church. But from this vocation perspective, I'll be able to end up in places or talk with people that our pastor at church might not ever get to talk to.
Right.
Sure.
You know, and so I love that. I love that. You
That's super cool.
I love talking to the people that are afraid to go to church.
Yeah.
You know, or the business people that have made a bunch of mistakes, or you know, don't think they can go to church, or that believe totally different. Than me. You know, and
what have you learned about money and like its role in the world?
Yeah, I mean it's important, right? Like you gotta have it,
right?
You know, and it does make a lot of things work. It definitely makes a lot of things easier,
right?
Sure.
You know, but I don't know. I think I'm still working through that. Like I think I still struggle with. I'd love to have a brand new Porsche right now. You know,
me too.
Right? You know, and I'd love to have the 100 million under management. It'd be a lot easier from the.
Then you would have the brand new Porsche right now.
You know, so that's a tough question as far as like I think for me I have to like daily come to grips with that.
Yeah.
You know, because managing other people's money, like you know, it's a big deal. Like you got to be careful. You know.
Yeah.
But it can't. You know, I have one investor who's been super successful, and he always tells me like he's been super encouraging. That's the other side of it, like the encouragement that I receive from like, you know, from what I'm doing. John's been super encouraging actually with that because he's much more confident than I am.
Sure,
you know, at least is he. You know, he's real good at that, and so like he's been super encouraging. But like another guy's like scared money doesn't make money.
Yeah,
you know, and so he tells me that all the time.
That's a good word.
You know, like on just taking risk.
Yeah.
You know, so you can't be afraid to take risk.
Right.
But, you know, so that's hard.
Yeah. Totally. I like that. Scared money doesn't make money.
I'm so curious too. Like, man, I don't know how to ask this question, but the being around that kind of people, or that, you know,
high net worth individuals,
like that demographic of people. I mean, that has to be like pretty. Like shocking. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but there has to be some sort of like whiplash to a certain extent to be working with such wealth. I imagine if you're working with 35 people who are invested in, you know, some sort of hedge fund in Fish Lake Capital, that has to be pretty wild. My question I have for you is, what's it like operating with the rest of the world, with them, you know, the people that can't invest in a hedge fund? What is that dialogue like for you? Because I work at Redeemer, you know, you know what I mean? I literally, you just said a lot of things about dividends and equity and real estate, and I have absolutely no idea anything that you just said. So I guess like, what is that like? And what I'm talking about is, you swim in that water, Fish Lake. You swim in that water all the time, but then also you interact with just like people that have literally no idea what's going on. What is that like? Because I feel like to the average American, that's the dream, right? You know, and I think in a lot of ways, like the aspiration of so many people. So what is it like kind of being a liaison? I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't know if you're a liaison. But what is it like having to kind of live in both worlds, have access to the hyper rich, you know, whatever you want to call it, but then also just like be a normal person? Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it like something that a lot of people try to take advantage of you on, or is it something that a lot of people like have more curiosity about, or is it, I don't know.
You mean just the questions get asked?
Yeah, I mean, essentially what I'm saying is money is the most polarizing and opinionated thing that happens in the world, and you work in money. So what is that like? Go ahead.
Yeah. No, so what's interesting is, and this will sound terrible, but the people with the least amount of money are the hardest to work with.
Really?
Yeah.
And then the people that have the most are like the easiest to work with.
Yeah.
Like, and I wasn't really expecting that.
Sure.
You know, so because it's like the people with smaller amounts, when it comes to, I don't know, I want to be careful, like, but I'll
give an example, at least. Like, so I do insurance for primarily for churches and nonprofits, but we're a commercial insurance broker, so we do P&C, property and casualty stuff. And I just wrote a church recently that was like their premium was over $50,000 a year, and they were very highly communicative. I touched base with them, once a week for several weeks leading up to when their policy renewed, and ended up winning the account and blah blah blah. Went and met with them once, but it was like all positive interactions, and I feel like I have a great relationship with them now after talking to them, in person once and on the phone a bunch of times. They set everything up to automatically pay, and like I'll interact with them if they need any certificates or anything, but most likely I probably won't talk to them again until next year. And there's a church that I wrote that we've had a relationship with for a number of years, who is in a lower income area in Birmingham, and their premium is not as much money, and they're late on their payments every month, and I have to call them to make sure that they know that they're late on payments, and I have to go collect the payment from them, and they're always complaining about how insurance is expensive, or trying to work around like $35 late fees, even though they're late every month. There is a certain stress that I think comes from a lack of money that can make you, that stress often comes out when you're interacting with people who you owe money to or have to pay money to. So I think that similar to the scared money doesn't make money analogy or phrase that guy said, oftentimes the people who have more money don't have the stress and concern of losing the money as much as some people who don't have as much money. So I don't know if that's like a similar experience you've had, but to me, often the customers who pay me more money on my commission statement every month tend to be the better customers to interact with. The big daycare that buys the $30,000 policy, pays for it in full for the year, I don't interact with again until the next year when they pay their premium again. Whereas the small little one-man shop guy who's paying $2,000 a year is calling me every year talking about how, it went up $300 and it's really frustrating, and he's going to go find something better, and he chews me out on the phone and then walks away. So that's my experience, at least.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like make you, talk bad about your customers or anything, but that's my experience, at least with that kind of analogy you're talking about, Stephen.
Yeah, I think some of the business owners, some of the more higher net worth people, I think they know that like it's hard to make money.
Right. And
that there's risk involved. So like it's not always like from the market perspective, like it's going to go up and down. Like not everything is going to work, like it takes time, like they're much more patient, I think, and so so I'll get some of the most encouragement from some of the wealthiest people, because I think they understand risk more, maybe,
Sure.
And that it's, that it is hard and it's not automatic and not everything works.
Yeah.
And so you kind of have to know that, and then like, not everybody's like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think it'd be so interesting. Like I don't know. Maybe this is just maybe it's just because I'm 26. I'm like younger end of the people that have like I don't know. I guess just like in the world that I observe it, no one is more judged than the rich. Like people like hate the rich, and I was just curious if you had ever had to catch any flack from that, because that must be
okay. Yeah, I'd say no.
No, you haven't. I just think it's so interesting too, how there is like an inherent relationship, I feel like, too, of just like, I don't know, like patience and like understanding with success, regardless of monetary. I think so too, because I think some of the people in ministry too, like that. I mean, I know a lot of people have been in ministry their whole life, and they're not wealthy by like they don't have more like zeros in their account, but like, oh my gosh, I admire the heck out of they do ministry. And there's a guy like Richard Trucks, the guy that was third pres forever. He's a member here now. And he's like the most patient, encouraging thing. So I think it's that kind of, I think it's kind of fascinating too. Whereas like, if you are, if you're quick to judge, an old white pastor from Birmingham would probably be the person that you would throw judgment on really fast. But if you're quick to love and quick to listen, that's like the most admirable person in the world. So I was curious if you had seen any crossover in that, but that it kind of sounds like the same sort of thing. I mean, I guess it definitely exists in money too, but I guess that kind of just exists across the board.
I think so, because I have met with people that I have not wanted to work with, on both ends of the spectrum.
Sure. Right.
And so maybe that's what you're speaking to. Not everybody's, and I think that is human nature.
Dude, I was listening to I don't think this was you sent me one about a conflict.
The communication thing.
I watched Jordan Peterson this week, Myers. Are you so proud of me?
Wow.
Myers loves
Can't believe
Jordan
it.
Peterson.
Yeah.
And I was listening to him, and he was having a conversation with this guy, and they were talking about like the 4 vices. It was like power, pleasure, money, and one other thing I can't remember. They were like trying to figure out which one they were most prone to. I don't remember what it was like. They were most tempted by. Yeah. Have you watched this?
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was so interesting hearing them talk about money because these dudes are both like. I mean, they were.
I think it was respect was the one that you might have left off.
Maybe that's what it was. Respect was,
or like honor, like approval of man.
And it was so fascinating hearing them talk about money, and they were just like exactly what y'all just said. It was like money is helpful just because it helps you have opportunity and access to things, and it just depends. And I was also thinking about that a lot this past week with like the superintendent at Augusta National. I don't even know if he needs to make a lot of money because I was curious. Me and Gracie were talking about how much money he might have on our date night last night. We were like, how much money? Because they probably have a partnership with Mercedes, so he gets a car. They probably own a house at around the grounds, so he's got a house in Augusta. They've definitely got a hotel sponsorship, so he can stay wherever he wants. They've definitely got a Delta sponsorship, so he can fly wherever he wants.
Right.
Like he doesn't have to pay for a vacation if he.
Yeah.
And then you have to wear the green jacket, which you get for free if you. I'm assuming.
Right.
So he has a uniform that he has to wear every time he's there.
Yeah.
And I was like, in a weird way, we were like, that's kind of like a Baptist church that they buy your suit and they give you a parsonage.
Yeah.
And then you use a member a deacon's beach house.
Right.
It comes with a car. And
that's funny.
And it's just all. Anyways, we were talking about value systems, and there's not and to a certain extent, currency is just a value system. We talk about on the podcast. We should have done this segment with him, honestly.
What is it?
Is there money in heaven? Because it's we think the conversation's so fascinating.
Yeah.
Of I'm not saying that God's a socialist, but I don't know if
you will be fully provided for by a almighty power
in the Garden of Eden. At what point, if the Garden of Eden would have been populated past Adam and Eve, at what point would there have to be some sort of system of trade? And if so, what would it have been? Or would it have just been everyone kindly gave around?
Right.
And I think in the restoration of Eden, I don't know if you're a Tim Keller guy, but I'm assuming you are because you're you're a Reformed guy. But Tim Keller, every good endeavor is in my opinion, it's canon. It could be in the Bible. And but you think the restoration of Eden. We were also kind of talking about this. Anna, who's a pastry chef in town, and how one day in the future, the restoration, the new heavens and new earth, what you're doing as a believer is so cool. Because you are, in a sense, helping people manage a value system through in an ethical way, and even in a strange. I don't know the ins and outs of the Alabama security, whatever it's called, the organization, but in a way, they are helping that too. Of I have the relationship with an older man who put all of his money into organization like you run, and that he got a call one day that. The you in his life was had committed suicide in Las Vegas, and all of his money was gone. Tens of millions of dollars gone. And he's like, "Well, crap!" And he had to start fresh over. And he was 40 years old.
You know this guy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was a very fascinating experience. So and then also this is going to be a whole other tangent. But I really admire what you're doing because of that guy, because like I feel like you're doing honest work, but then also like in a very different way. Like I was supposed to go overseas. I was on staff with Campus Outreach.
Yeah, no, we hadn't talked about that.
We didn't talk about it at all. I was
like
set to go to London, spring break of my senior year of college. I'm like, we learned about this, disease from China, and COVID happened. So then I get sent home after spring break, and then I go into new staff orientation, NSO, as they call it at CO, Campus Outreach, and they were just like, act like COVID doesn't, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. They're like, act like COVID doesn't exist until we figure out more about it. And it was like June of 2020. And I was like, I'm like, not going, I'm not like, I have no idea what to do, but I know that I don't like that answer. And so I like, it freaking sent me into a frenzy because like pandemic, philosophically, if you paid attention, if your soul was alive at all, then like you went into a philosophical and ministerial frenzy and just like, everything was so upside down. And I had so much like obviously associated value with like you have to go do missions in order to be a good person. So I relate it so much to what you're saying, and I feel like whether it's theology if you're a Christian or whether it's just in pursuit of philosophy if you're not a believer, like it has to happen through trial and error, like through like you have to. Like iron does not sharpen iron like easily. It has to have friction, and I think it's such a cool thing to hear how the beauty of all the different like trials that you've been through that have kind of led you to where you're playing. I'm trying to like wrap a bow and all of that, but I have like a million thoughts right now. But I like related to so much of what you're saying.
Oh, well, good.
Really
I hope
cool.
I didn't. I probably.
Oh, it was fantastic.
You can edit out
no,
as much as you
loved it.
I genuinely have no idea how long it feels like we've been talking for 20 minutes.
45.
Hour 45.
Sweat.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
But it's like, it is crazy. Like it is so wild how the Lord kind of has like led you to where you're at right now. So yeah. I don't know. I
was going to say I could keep asking you questions for probably hours.
Yeah,
but
I want to be.
I was going to say I want to be conscious of your time, but like I'd love to keep talking.
Yeah, I think the thing that I've learned maybe is just freedom.
Yeah.
Like it's freedom. I think God is much more fun than I realize.
I like that word. Yeah, fun.
He's not near as stressed out as I am.
Yeah.
So it's like. It's
That's
okay.
actually so true. Have you ever read the book Notes from a Tilt-A-Whirl? That's kind of random. Anyway, so he talks about that.
Well, I think there's freedom. There's freedom to be in the business world. There's freedom to be a college minister. There's freedom to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like it's really okay. Like it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's so interesting how even you were like, you tried to, even whenever you originally did the McDonald's thing, you were like, you still tried to put it in the framework of like, well, I'm going to be like the deacons of the Baptist church from Decatur. You still tried to fit it back into your, and now you're just like, oh wait, I get to just be fully loved.
Yeah.
And like go on. And like, you didn't really claim it or you didn't like title it that way, I guess. But I feel like that's such a hard part is like, for me, it was like, I thought that in order to be a good person, you had to be, like you had to be a missionary.
Yeah.
And if I'm being honest with you, like this is how like my behavior.
I agree.
You have to go to a lost place. And then, well, I guess at first it was like you have to be a Christian, and then it was like, well, that's not enough. Now you have to be a missionary. You have to live somewhere gone. And then I came home, and it was like, well, and for a long time until probably about a year and a half ago, I was like, oh, you have to go somewhere in America that's super lost. I thought I have been a college minister in Birmingham for 5 years. And the whole time in the back of my head, and I'll be honest with you, probably still to this day, I don't like this about myself. I think that pastors in Birmingham are lazy. I think pastors in Birmingham
it's not good enough.
Yeah, it's not lost enough.
Yeah,
it's
too
not
easy.
hard enough.
Yeah.
And I think just being able to fully believe that, oh wait, like this is obviously where God has me is really difficult for me. So it's been really It's been inspiring. That's the most Christian thing I've ever said on the podcast. I love it.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
See, I think it's who we are, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's the honesty and the just that's whatever role you end up being in. You know, like it's I don't know.
I love what you're saying about freedom, though. Like,
because I've just been so afraid.
Yeah.
Even now, like I get afraid. Like
right.
I'm just afraid.
Right.
Know?
Sure.
So I think.
Freedom's a good word.
And I mean, there are spiritual disciplines, and God has order for things, but like He does want you to have fun. He wants you to enjoy your life. He's a good Father who gives good gifts.
Yeah,
like that's Scripture just as much as anything else.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jeff. Thank you so much.
That's a good place to end right there.
Yeah, for real.
Do you have any last parting thoughts? Do you want to plug yourself in any way? This is marketing, and you said you wanted to get better.
I will say it's Fish Creek Capital.
I said
yes,
Fish
he
Lake.
said Fish Lake. Yeah,
sorry, Fish Creek. Just one
Maybe
day.
I'll put your website in the bio or whatever.
Yeah, I do have a website. I do have a website.
Love it.
Trying to do some YouTube videos.
Yeah,
come on. That's what that guy, the Chase, what's the dude we were really into on Business Insider? He came out with a video. He left Chase. He was the biggest stock trader in the world. Left Chase, and
I
now
forgot
he
his name. Yes,
he makes YouTube.
Cool.
We'll talk about him afterwards, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're listening to this and you're a Sanford student, you should tell your parents about Jeff.
literally.
And one day, whenever you're making billions of dollars because you had a big old nest egg, you can hit up Jeff then.
So that's right. Come on, Sanford.
Marketing.
Step it up.
Love it.
Oh, man. Cool. Hey, Jeff, seriously, this has been
so much fun.
I loved listening to your story. It was really, really cool. So thanks for being on.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And
thanks for sharing.
Coming out. Down into our parts, back over from Bucky's land, all the way down so,
all the way downtown.
We'll have you anytime. So it was a pleasure to hear you. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Cheers.
How about that? That was awesome.
I might sweat.
I know, yeah. I was thinking about turning the fan on. I was like,
Yeah, you got the sun kind of rudely on you.
Well, okay.